Dungeons in Hypixel Skyblock consists of two main components, the clear and the boss fight. The boss fight comes at the end of the dungeon, where defeating the last boss will complete the floor and grant you some nice rewards. Most players will know each dungeon by their boss fight, as this is the main section that separates all of the floors from each other. However, your final dungeon score, the quality of the loot, and even the amount of Catacombs XP you gain are completely influenced by the first part of the dungeon, the clear. The clear also happens to be one of the least understood and more complex part of the dungeon for the vast majority of newer players, so in order to help with this, I've taken the time to put this video together. The goal of today's video will not just be to teach you how the clear works, but I will also teach you clearing strategies and other crucial tips to get you running dungeons as efficiently as possible. So with all that being said, what actually is dungeon clearing? Dungeon clearing can be split up into two main parts, room clearing and collecting secrets. Room clearing is when you kill all of these special mobs in a room to officially mark it as cleared, or you complete the puzzle that was found in that room. You can tell whether a room has been cleared or not by looking at your dungeon map and seeing if it's marked with a white check mark. Collecting secrets is the act of locating and grabbing all of the secrets found in any given room, and you can tell if a room's secrets have been found if the checkmark turns green instead of white. If a room's secrets have been cleared but the mobs haven't, the room will show up as an uncleared room with no secrets found, so it's important to always clear your rooms first before you collect the secrets. You can also tell how many of a room's secrets have been collected by checking the secret counter above your hotbar if you're in that room. The amount of rooms you clear and secrets you collect will increase your overall dungeon score, and your dungeon score is what determines how good your loot and XP gain is once the boss is defeated. To keep this video simple, I will not be covering what the dungeon scores are and how they're calculated, and instead I will leave a link to the Hypixel wiki page that has all of this information on it. Regardless, clearing every room and collecting almost every secret will be in the best interest of most dungeon parties, because otherwise, you won't get an S+ score, which is required to obtain all of the best loot. As a result, I will base this entire video on the assumption that the goal is to reach the highest dungeon score by fully clearing every room in the dungeon. At its core, dungeon clearing and its purpose is a very simple concept to understand, but knowing optimized ways to clear rooms or collect secrets is very important to having fast and efficient runs. This video aims to teach some simple room and secret clearing tips that can easily be understood even at a beginner level. So without further ado, let's start by covering room clearing in more depth. To get good at clearing rooms efficiently, you'll first need to understand the different types of rooms and their gimmicks. Every dungeon run will have a minimum of 6 different types of rooms, but on floor 3 and above, you'll encounter 7 different types. These are the entrance room, regular clearable rooms, puzzle rooms, fairy room, yellow room, and blood room. The 7th type of room that's found on floor 3 and above is called trap room, but I'll come back to this one in a moment. The entrance room is the room that you start in, and it's marked as a green square on the dungeon map. This is where you'll find Mort, allowing you to select and confirm your dungeon class at the beginning of the run. When you and your team confirm that you're ready to start, Mort gives you a countdown and the dungeon commences. Regular rooms will make up the majority of the dungeon, and they're marked as brown on the dungeon map. Unlike the entrance room, regular rooms will come in all different shapes and sizes, being 1x1, 1x2, 1x3, 1x4, 2x2, or L-shaped. These rooms can be cleared by killing all of the special mobs within the room, and typically, there will also be anywhere from 0 to 10 different secrets that need to be found. To determine which of the mobs are special and required to be taken out to count the room as cleared, you'll want to look for their name tags to see if there's a gold star at the front of their name. If there is, then this mob needs to be taken out with all of the other similar mobs before the room is officially cleared. Dungeon players call these special mobs starred mobs, so that's what I'll be referring to them as for the rest of this video. Starred mobs can also come in the form of mini-bosses, and in most cases, you'll only need to clear the one starred mini-boss to clear the room. In very rare cases, a room will have both a starred mini-boss and a couple of regular starred mobs, but you can also find rooms that will have starred mobs and then a non-starred mini-boss. Once you've killed every starred mob or mini-boss, the room will be officially marked as cleared, and a white checkmark will appear on the room on the dungeon map. The next type of dungeon room is the puzzle room. This room is marked as a purple square on your dungeon map, and it will always be found at a dead end within the dungeon. The Blaze and Tic Tac Toe puzzles specifically also spawn with one secret as well as their respective puzzle, so it's important to learn these as well. The main thing about the puzzle rooms is pretty obvious though, and that's solving the puzzle that can be found in the room. Doing so will clear the room and mark it with a white checkmark, and if all the secrets are found, that checkmark will then turn green. There are 11 different types of puzzle rooms that can spawn in a dungeon, but these will vary based on the floor you're playing, and I won't cover the specifics of them in this video. There are plenty of different dungeon mods, websites, and other tools that will help you understand how the puzzles work and how to complete them, so I'll leave a couple of useful links in the description of this video if you'd like to learn more. Similar to the puzzle room is Yellow Room, which, as the name implies, is marked as the yellow square on your dungeon map. Yellow rooms will also always mark a dead end within a dungeon, which can be useful knowledge if you're trying to predict where some rooms will be. Yellow room is also known as the mini-boss room because all this room does is spawn a single mini-boss inside it. But this mini-boss will be much stronger than any of the other mini-bosses you'll find in the regular rooms. The mini-boss you face and the type of room that it spawns in will also vary based on the floor you're doing, so once again, I will leave a link in the description to the Hypixel wiki page if you wish to learn more about this. Fairy room is marked as a pink square on the dungeon map, and this room will always spawn roughly in the center of the dungeon. This room contains 4 fairies, which will drop revive stones if you kill them while your team is alive. If you or one of your teammates is dead though, then sacrificing a fairy will just revive the player on the spot. Dead players can also fly as a ghost towards fairy room to revive themselves as long as an alive player has walked inside it at least once. Don't be afraid to kill a fairy if you need to revive you or your teammates, because contrary to popular belief, killing fairies does not hurt your dungeon score. It's the death that happened for other reasons that does. Fairy room also has a magical water pond that has greatly increased health regeneration, which can be useful to retreat in if you're struggling during the clear. This room does not require you to do anything to clear it, and it will also never contain any secrets. The blood room is marked as the red square on the dungeon map, and this room represents the end of the dungeon. Upon clearing blood room, a portal at the back of the room will open. This portal will take you straight into the boss fight if you or any of your teammates walk into it, and it's crucial that you do not enter the portal until the rest of the dungeon has been cleared to the standard that you're going for. Blood room is cleared by killing all of the blood mobs that spawn inside it, and these mobs will spawn one after the other at the discretion of the Watcher. The Watcher is just a floating eyeball that says a bunch of random dialogue and spawns all the mobs, but he himself cannot be attacked. I'll talk a little bit more about Blood Room later in this video, but for now, that's all you need to know. The last type of room you'll find in a dungeon is Trap Room, and this is marked as an orange square on the dungeon map. Trap Room will only spawn on floor 3 and above, and to clear it, you need to open a specific chest that marks the end of the room. The difficulty with Trap Room comes with the fact that most abilities are disabled when inside it, so you are forced to do parkour that's littered with traps instead of just AOTEing through all of it. Completing all the parkour and interacting with all of the levers and secrets will lead you to the final chest that's found at the end of the Trap Room, which will clear the room once opened. However, there are some very clever and super effective trap strategies that let you open this final chest without having to go through all the annoying parkour and traps, but I'll cover how to do these later on. However, that's it for all the different types of rooms and how to clear them. Now that you understand this, I'm going to talk about general clearing strategy and some tips and tricks you can do to speed up your runs. The first and arguably the most important clearing strategy for every typical dungeon party is called blood rushing. Blood rushing is when you or your teammates clear the minimum amount of rooms necessary to reach the blood room as fast as possible. In lower levels, you can usually just assign one person to be your designated blood rusher, where their goal is to clear all of the regular rooms locked behind wither doors. In the first room of the dungeon, one of the doors leading out of the room will be blocked off with a wall of coal blocks. This door is called a wither door, and if you wish to unlock it, you need to clear the entire room first because the final starred mob will drop the wither key. Walking over the dropped wither key will pick it up, and as long as anyone in your party has collected it, you will now be able to walk back to that wither door and then left or right click it to open it. This wither door will lead into another room that also contains a wither door, and then clearing that room will lead into another wither door, and so on and so forth. This forms a path of wither door rooms which will end at a final room, where instead of the mobs dropping a wither key, they will drop a blood key instead. The blood key can be used to open the blood room, which will complete what is called the blood rush split. The act of speedrunning your way to the end of the blood rush split is called blood rushing, and the blood rush is finished once that final blood door has been open. Doing so will let the watcher spawn all of the blood mobs while the rest of the team clears the dungeon, where the blood rusher can also contribute to this as well. The blood rusher should go back and clear out any of the other rooms that haven't been cleared yet, and they should help out with collecting secrets as well. Once all of the rooms have been cleared and enough secrets have been collected, the blood rusher or anyone else in the party can head back to blood room, kill all the mobs that have been waiting there, and then proceed with the boss fight. Blood rushing is super important because it can save you a lot of time. If you clear the dungeon first and then open blood room at the very end, you'd be forced to sit through all that watcher dialogue and kill each blood mob one by one. This takes up way too much time, and it's far more efficient to just let the blood mobs spawn while the party clears out the rest of the dungeon. At higher levels, you also might assign someone to be what's called a blood camper. A blood camper is a player that sits in blood room directly after the blood door has been opened, and their goal is to kill each mob as soon as it spawns in. This is because spawn killing the blood mobs actually makes the blood room clear much quicker, but because it requires someone to sit in blood room for around a minute, usually this isn't worth doing unless your party is exceptionally good at clearing the rest of the dungeon. Regardless, blood rushing is always worth it no matter how fast or slow your party is, so make sure you always have a designated blood rusher in every dungeon you do. The next strategy I'll cover builds off of blood rushing, and this strategy is knowing what splits to take. If you're new to dungeons, then you probably won't even know what a split is, so let me explain. A split is simply just a section of a dungeon that splits off from the main body of the dungeon. The main body consists of all the rooms that have to be cleared for the blood rush, also known as the blood rush split. Any clusters of room that split off from this main body are referred to as splits. This is really important because your goal as a dungeon player is to clear 1 to 2 splits entirely by yourself. Because if you and 4 other players all take different splits, by the time you've finished with 1, the rest of your team should have finished with 4 others, clearing out the whole dungeon very quickly. If you have more than one person clearing the same split, you're losing out on a lot of potential efficiency since that extra person could be clearing out a different split. As a result, when the dungeon starts and everyone rushes into the first room, try to find your own split as fast as possible. Sometimes the dungeon will start off too small for every player to have their own split straight away, so you may have to open some wither doors first before you find your split. Once you have found it though, go through and clear both the starred mobs and the secrets efficiently using the next strategy that I'll cover right now. The next clearing strategy applies to effective split clearing, and this strategy is called clearing before secrets. The goal with room clearing in dungeons is to clear out your entire split until you reach a dead end, which will usually result in either a puzzle, yellow room, or trap room. Occasionally, your split will end in a regular room too, and if that's the case, just clear the final room as you would. Once you've cleared all the starred mobs in every room of your split, that's when you can go backwards and clear all the secrets that have yet to be found, making your way all the way back to the main body of the dungeon, which the blood rusher should have already cleared. Clearing before secrets reveals the full dungeon map much quicker, which is useful because it tells everyone which puzzles spawned, where trap room is, and the general dungeon layout. Clearing before secrets also prevents backtracking, which is where you're running through already completed rooms and unable to do anything useful. If you manage to clear your split much faster than the rest of your team, you can go around looking for a second split to clear, but in many cases, you won't need to do this and instead will just help out collecting the last few secrets that have yet to be found. If you are the blood rusher, then all of the rooms in the blood rush technically count as your split, and the blood room would be considered the dead end. However, blood rushers typically won't go back so far to the point where they're clearing the very first room of the dungeon, because there are usually splits right at the end of the blood rush which they can take instead. If you finish these really early and your other teammates still haven't found the secrets in the blood rush rooms, you can go back and find them then. Lastly, I'll quickly mention mid-clearing as a subcategory of clearing before secrets. In very rare cases, it may be more beneficial to leave a room partially cleared before progressing onto the next room in your split. This is because some rooms are so tedious that it becomes more efficient to clear the easy mobs first, move on with the split, and then come back and finish clearing the room later as you collect the secrets. I won't really cover this at all in this video since it is more advanced and not a good habit to get into early on, so stick to clearing the rooms in your splits first until the split is fully uncovered. If you combine these three strategies, blood rushing, taking splits, and clearing before secrets, you and the rest of your dungeon party should be able to very quickly, efficiently, and effectively clear out any dungeon you choose to encounter. However, these strategies only apply to room clearing because once the rooms are cleared, the last step is to collect all of the secrets. If you've clicked on this video, then there's a good chance you're probably wondering how you should go about this, so let's move on to the second major part of this video, collecting secrets. Collecting secrets, also known as secreting, is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's when you clear out all of the secrets within a room, typically after the starred mobs have been cleared. Most rooms inside of a dungeon will contain anywhere between 1 to 10 secrets. However, there are a few rooms that don't contain any secrets at all. If this is the case, simply clearing the mobs, puzzle, or other room gimmick will be enough to mark the room with the green checkmark on the dungeon map. There are 6 different types of secrets to look out for when clearing rooms: chests, dropped items, wither essences, bats, redstone keys, and mimics. These can all be collected simply by interacting with the secret, whether it be walking over the physically dropped item, opening the chest, clicking on the wither essence, killing the bat, or even placing the redstone key. Similar to room clearing, there are some basic secret clearing strategies that dungeon players have developed to improve efficiency. This is typically known as routing or secret routing, because the secrets that spawn in any given room will always spawn in the same location, and it will be the same type of secret as well. This means that if one room spawns a chest in a certain place, and then you ran a different dungeon and you found that same room, that chest will still be in that same location, but the loot that the chest has might be slightly different. As a result, learning the most optimal pathways between secrets and practicing them is super beneficial, because this can be refined and perfected to the point where collecting secrets becomes muscle memory. If you are a new dungeon player, then learning secret routes will definitely come as quite the challenge at first, so let me break it down into simple steps to make it easier to understand. The first step to learning secret routes is actually learning the location of every secret inside the room. The best way to get started with this is to use mods such as the Dungeon Secret Guides mod, which I will leave a link to in the description. This mod places waypoints on all the secrets inside every single dungeon room, including any super boom walls and levers that you need to interact with first. Dungeon Secret Guides is an excellent mod for beginners, however, I really only recommend this in the very early stages, and it should be treated similar to how you treat training wheels on a bicycle. Eventually, you will want to get rid of them. Once you've learned a vast majority of secret locations and you've started to familiarize yourself with all of the dungeon rooms, this is where you'll want to start figuring out the quickest ways between all the secrets. This is as self-explanatory as it sounds and will just require you to consciously try to find the smoothest and most efficient route between secrets, and then reusing that route over and over again. This leads me onto the last step to learning secret routes: practice, practice, practice. Realistically, turning on a Dungeon Secrets mod and collecting the secrets it shows you isn't that difficult. It's being able to recognize a room as soon as you've entered it, and then immediately following an optimized route. My recommendations to practicing your secret routes is to run lots of solo or duo dungeon runs, where your only goal is to clear as best as possible. This will get you tons of practice without holding up a team in the process, and if you bring a friend with you, this will let you bounce ideas off each other and brainstorm better routes together. Additionally, you can pair these solo or duo runs with advanced secret routing tools that high-level dungeon players have already created, such as the routes bot found in Flame of War's Discord server. Flame of War has also made a website which showcases optimized routes for every single room that can spawn in the catacombs, and I'll make sure to leave links to both his Discord server and the website in the description. I'd highly suggest checking these out because his routes are some of the best by far, and he's constantly working to update them to ensure your clears are as fast as possible. That being said, these higher level routes require some special items and techniques, so let's talk about those. The first routing tip is by far the most important, and this is utilizing a Stonk. For those that are unaware, the Stonk pickaxe is an efficiency 6 golden pickaxe that can be purchased in the End Island shop for 500,000 coins. This item is so important because it comes with efficiency 6 already applied. And for those that aren't already aware, This allows you to insta-break a wide variety of different stone and clay blocks, which are all commonly found inside of dungeons. Now, you might be wondering, insta-break blocks? You can't break blocks inside of dungeons. And while you can't literally break a block so that air replaces it, you can still break the block on the client side for a split second before the block replaces itself. This split second window is where the magic happens. If you've managed to clip your player's hitbox in a particular way, you can actually run through the blocks you're trying to break while the blocks appear to be broken on your screen. This lets you literally phase straight into walls and then run through to whatever is on the other side. This is revolutionary for secret routing because now you can create optimal pathways that run through walls instead of having to follow the typical boundaries set within the dungeons. The easiest way to pull off this maneuver is by using any type of stair. All you need to do is stand on the lower half of the stair, break the stair, and then while the stair is broken on your screen, walk into it so the lower half of your player is now inside of the stair. This state, where the player is inside of the stair, is crucial because the server can't actually tell the difference between whether you are on the lower half of the stair or whether you are actually inside of the stair's full hitbox. This causes the server to think that the player that's inside of the stair is still moving legally, and it won't try to lag you back as a result. We can use this to our advantage by then running into a wall that's next to the stair, and then insta-breaking the blocks that make up the wall while holding the forward key. This will enable you to run through the wall as long as the blocks are breaking on your screen, because the server still thinks that this movement should be legal, even though you quite literally are walking through walls. If you try to run through walls for too long, the server will eventually realize that your movement is illegal and it will prevent you from moving any further, which if you're not careful, will lead to you suffocating inside of a wall, and it's really hard to get out of this. Running through walls like this becomes increasingly more difficult the lower your ping is, because the blocks on low ping players' screens will replace quicker than someone with higher ping. As a result, I will cover other ways to phase through walls later that you can also use to your advantage. That right there is the most basic of stonk tricks, also known as a dungeon cheese. For simplicity, I'll refer to any similar glitches as cheeses, since this is the typical terminology that you'll see thrown around in the community. However, now that you understand the importance of the stonk pickaxe, let's go over some other cheeses that you should know about and start learning. The next important cheese to learn is ghost blocks. Ghost blocks are what dungeon players call the air blocks that are left behind after you insta-break any block using a stonk. If you try to insta-break blocks normally, the blocks will break and replace pretty fast, but if we use a couple of special inventory tricks, we can actually prevent the blocks from replacing entirely. These broken blocks are called ghost blocks, and while it looks like you could just run straight through them as if they were actually broken, you can't actually walk through them that easily. Ghost blocks are super handy since they allow you to interact with anything that's behind blocks in a way where the game behaves like there weren't any blocks there in the first place. This means that you can actually open chests and flick levers without having to go reach the chest or lever the normal way, enabling you to create routes that save heaps of time. The reason this works is because the server doesn't realize that the chest that you're reaching through a wall is impossible. It just sees that you've tried to open a chest that's in your reach, and thus it lets you open it. Walking through these ghost blocks is different though, because the game does have checks for whether your physical movement is legal or not. I'll cover other ways to clip into ghost blocks that aren't using the bottom halves of stairs, which will also trick the server into thinking that your movement is legal. You can also right-click ghost blocks to place the original blocks back in their position if you need to reset them. Now that we understand the importance of ghost blocks, let me teach you how to create them. There are two main ways to create ghost blocks. The first is with a ghost pick, and the second is with stonk swapping. Stonk swapping is much easier to understand and arguably the more useful technique, so let's start with that one first. To stonk swap, start by holding any random item in your hotbar that isn't your pickaxe. Then, you'll want to left click with that item as if you were going to insta-break one singular block, and then swap to your stonk pickaxe at the same time. This is best done using hotkeys, so if you're trying to use the scroll wheel to pull this off, I'd strongly recommend practicing it with hotkeys instead. If you've timed this correctly, the block you were aiming at should have broken and it shouldn't have replaced like it normally would. This happens because the server thinks that you've just swung a random item at a random block, and it hasn't registered the fact that you actually swapped to your pickaxe at the last second. Since you technically did switch to a pickaxe and then you broke the block for a split second, you'll see the block broken on your screen, but it won't actually be broken. It's also important to mention that if you're playing the mage class, make sure that you start your stonk swap with an item that won't proc your mage beam attack. it becomes extremely difficult to stonk swap if you've got mage beams and guided sheep blocking your vision, so get comfortable using hotkeys that don't involve such items. The next method to creating ghost blocks is by using a ghost pickaxe, or a ghost pick for short. A ghost pickaxe is what happens when you manage to trick the server into thinking that your stonk is in an inventory slot that it's not actually in. This is what we call a ghost pick, and if you try to break blocks with the ghost pick, every block you break will turn into a ghost block. There are two main ways to create a ghost pick, so I'll cover them both right here. For the first method, start by hovering your cursor over your stonk in your hotbar and take note of the slot that it's in. If you have the pickaxe in slot 2 like myself, this means that you need to press 2 on your keyboard to activate the keybind for this slot. If you've changed the default Minecraft hotkeys, follow along but with whatever your keybinds are. With your cursor over the stonk, press the number 2 and then 3 on your keyboard in short succession with approximately a 50 millisecond delay. You don't have to press the number 3 if it's not convenient for you though, you just have to press any other hotkey slot keybind shortly after the pickaxe one. If you've done this correctly, you should see 2 pickaxes in your hotbar, and one of them should have replaced a different item in a different hotbar slot. The pickaxe in the original slot is now the ghost pickaxe, while the pickaxe in the other slot is the real one. What's actually happened here is that the ghost pickaxe is actually the item from slot 3, but instead of showing that item on your screen, it will still show the pickaxe that it was before. To delete the ghost pick, right-click while holding it to bring back the original item, or update your inventory in any way, such as picking up an item, dropping an item, opening a GUI, etc. For the second ghost pick method, start by hovering over the stonk again, but this time, hold shift while hovering over the cursor. Then, press the hotkey of the slot the pickaxe is in, and then left-click approximately 50 milliseconds after you've hit the keybind. This should shift-click the real pickaxe up somewhere in your inventory and leave the ghost pickaxe in your hotbar. You can then use this ghost pickaxe as normal and then put your real pickaxe back in your hotbar when you need it. This method is usually slower since returning the pickaxe to its original slot is a lot more effort, but I've included it in case you find it more useful than the first method. If either of these ghost pick techniques aren't working, try messing around with how fast or slow you're pressing your hotkeys. This is the most common reason for why your ghost picks aren't generating, and it's just something that you need a little practice with. That's about it for all ghost pick related cheeses though, so let's move on to the next useful item, ender pearls. On first thought, ender pearls don't really seem particularly useful for dungeon routing. They're slow moving, they don't get much distance, and are super janky, often glitching the player hitbox when landing and just causing problems in general. However, that janky behavior is what makes them so powerful, because we can use this to our advantage to clip through walls. If you throw an ender pearl at the right angle into ceilings or slabs, you can glitch your player model inside of the blocks, similar to how a player can be inside of a stairs hitbox. Using this to our advantage, we can pearl into some walls and then use the stonk to break our way through, opening up more possibilities for different routes. Best of all, ender pearls aren't disabled in Trap Room, and it'll likely stay this way seeing that the Hypixel admins recently patched pearling into Trap, but then they reverted the patch due to the immense backlash from the community. Ender pearl capability doesn't stop there though, because if we combine pearls with Super Boom or Infiniboom TNT, we can clip into almost every single flat wall, without the need to use a stair to glitch us in. This can be done by looking straight down whilst up against a wall, and then angling your camera to be on a slight upward angle. This should place your crosshair slightly behind the edge of the blocks you're trying to clip into. This angle is a little bit finicky and it will take some practice to understand, so don't get too discouraged if you can't figure it out straight away. When facing the wall at this angle, place a Super Boom or Infiniboom TNT by left clicking it while it's in your hand. Once the TNT gains a little airtime, throw the ender pearl at the floor. It's important to leave a slight delay between placing the TNT and throwing your pearl, and this delay will vary depending on your ping. The TNT entity will enable you to actually throw the ender pearl at your feet, because if you try to throw the pearl without the TNT, the game just won't let you throw the pearl at all. Since the pearl was thrown at such an angle with close proximity to the wall, it will clip your player's hitbox just enough to where you can mine the wall directly in front of you, just like I've shown previously. This technique is called TNT pearling, and while using an Infiniboom is the most common way of doing this, you can actually do this with any regular entity, such as the Spirit Scepter's bats, Midas Staff's gold blocks, or even the Yeti Sword's blocks. These dungeon cheeses will make up the majority of the cheeses that you use in your secret routing, but once you start to gain more coins to work with, this is where you can level things up even further. The Etherwarp Conduit is an item that can be applied to the aspect of the end or aspect of the void, and doing so grants your weapon the Ether Transmission right-click ability. You can also use the Ether Transmission ability by right-clicking while holding the Etherwarp Conduit, but there is never a time where this is more beneficial than just upgrading your AOTE or AOTV. At first glance, this ability is awesome because it gives you precise long-distance teleporting that at times will be more useful than regular teleporting. However, once you understand how weirdly buggy the mechanics are, you'll realize the hidden potential that it has for some awesome secret routes. Basically, the Etherwarp ability looks for two conditions before it teleports the player. The first condition is whether there is air above the block you're trying to teleport to, because it would be really silly if the Etherwarp could teleport you into a 1x1 hole that would just have you suffocating. This is really important to know, because you can actually Etherwarp onto blocks that are above you as long as the ceiling is 1 block thick with 2 air gaps above it. The second condition is whether the block you're trying to teleport onto is a solid block, which is why the Etherwarp ability also won't teleport you onto grass, flowers, and other non-solid blocks. However, this second condition is super wonky because there are a few blocks which it won't let you teleport on top of, but inside of. The most common instance of this is with cobblestone walls or fences. This happens because the Etherwarp ability is coded to teleport the player on top of the block that they're aiming at, and it makes sure to place the player 0.05 blocks above the block that was aimed at, so the player will land safely on top of that block. However, since the hitbox of a cobblestone wall or fence is 1.5 blocks tall, teleporting 0.05 blocks above a regular block will just place the player inside the fence or wall, causing them to drop down inside of the block hitbox. Similar to the stairs that I mentioned earlier, the server cannot tell the difference between whether you were just next to the fence or if you're literally inside of it, which lets you clip into blocks and run straight through walls. The Etherwarp ability can also teleport the player on top of skulls or placed player heads, which has the same dungeon cheese capabilities as cobblestone walls, fences, or stairs. This just opens up even more opportunities for fast and efficient dungeon routing, because if you find any of these blocks, you can also use them to clip into walls, just like stairs or TNT purling. Speaking of purling, the Etherwarp ability also works interestingly with ender pearls. Remember how I mentioned that you can Etherwarp directly above you as long as the ceiling is 1 block thick? Well, this is true, but you can also Etherwarp above 2 block thick ceilings as long as there is 2 air blocks above those as well. To do this, all you need to do is throw an ender pearl into the ceiling and swap to your AOTE or AOTV while it's traveling. When the pearl lands, your head will be clipped into the ceiling for a split second, where spamming the Etherwarp ability will teleport you on top of the ceiling as if the ceiling was originally 1 block thick. This happens because the ender pearl manages to clip you through the first layer of the ceiling, while the Etherwarp ability gets you through the second. You might have some troubles with this technique if the ender pearl you've thrown doesn't clip your head enough, but this is easily fixable by changing the angle you throw the pearl at or just retrying it until it works. Etherwarping is super useful, but the last and most expensive item for dungeon cheeses is an efficiency 10 diamond pickaxe. For those that aren't aware, the Silex item can be applied to any pickaxe 5 times, increasing its efficiency level by 1 per Silex. This means that applying 5 Silexes to an efficiency 5 pickaxe will make it efficiency 10. The reason this is valuable is because efficiency 10, specifically on a diamond pickaxe, enables you to break a small selection of extra blocks that you can find inside of a dungeon that a Stonk can't break. This includes certain stone blocks such as smooth stone slabs and cobblestones, as well as a few other niche blocks like iron bars. Technically, you can use a legendary Silverfish Pet to grant you haste 3 and then break these blocks with a Stonk, but this requires you to have to switch pet while clearing, which isn't ideal. Additionally, even with haste 3, you still can't break through iron bars and many different ore blocks, which an efficiency 10 diamond pickaxe definitely can. As a result, using an efficiency 10 diamond pickaxe is a nice upgrade to the Stonk once you can afford it, because it'll improve your quality of life even more than the Stonk did. Also, make sure you apply efficiency 10 to a diamond pickaxe and not a golden one, because an efficiency 10 golden pickaxe is slightly worse than a diamond pickaxe. An honorable mention to all of the items on this list is the legendary Silverfish Pet. This pet grants you permanent haste 3 when you have it equipped, which lets you break a few more blocks that you once couldn't using a Stonk, and same thing applies with the efficiency 10 diamond pickaxe. It's also really cheap to buy, so you might as well get one in conjunction with your Stonk. This combo will let you perform basically every cheese you'll ever come across when running dungeons, though some routes might be slightly trickier compared to the efficiency 10 methods. Slightly trickier doesn't mean impossible though, so it's good to know that most maneuvers can be done with a setup as basic as a Stonk and legendary Silverfish. That being said, that concludes all of these secret clearing tips that I have for today. The next section of this video will be a showcase of some optimized routes for some common rooms, and I won't be voicing over the sections much, if at all. The items that I use to complete the routes will be specified on each clip, and I'll make sure to label and timestamp them so you can refer back to them whenever you need. I will also deliberately perform these routes slowly so you can more easily follow along with the footage, but your goal when replicating them should be to complete the rooms as fast as possible. Lastly, I will also show some clips of me clearing some notoriously slow rooms, where I will show the difference between clearing it the normal way and clearing it with all the fancy tricks I've covered. This should give you an idea of how much of a difference these techniques make, and why learning them is so important. Nonetheless, enough of my yapping, let's just get straight into it. This bomb defuse method is a little bit confusing, so let me quickly explain what's going on here. The rabbit hat is used to get the jump boost so you can jump over the iron bars after you've ghost picked the blocks above. Then, the goal is to jump and glitch your hitbox very slightly into the ghost blocks by tapping the backwards key on your keyboard. When your player is slightly clipped in, you can shoot a bonzo balloon at the ceiling and this should push you through cleanly. Don't worry if you struggle with this at first, the technique is a little bit awkward so it will take some practice. The efficiency 10 method is much easier, but can also be a little bit confusing. The only difficulty here comes with getting enough speed to run through the iron bars, which is easily done with 500% speed, but can also be done with 400%. You also want to jump and align your head with the upper iron bar before you sprint straight through, as this will guarantee that you run in every time. That's why I jump before each set of iron bars, because that step's actually necessary to run through cleanly. And with all of those routes complete, that's going to conclude this dungeon clearing video. Hopefully you found this useful, informative, or enjoyable in some way, and if you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I'd also like to thank Flame of War and the Holy Chicken for helping me piece some of this video together, as their clearing and secret routing knowledge is definitely much more extensive than mine. If you haven't already, definitely check the two of them out, especially if you're interested in higher level dungeon gameplay. I'll leave a link to all their stuff in the description below. Nonetheless, that's all I had for this video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.